From 2021 through 2023, the Tucker Carlson Today show interviewed 252 guests in an hour-long format. Most were conservatives, but many were not. Carlson noted, and I agree with him, that these times seem to spur a lot of interesting conversations.
I will say the one upside of living in this moment of real turmoil, actual turmoil, not fake turmoil, not performative turmoil, but like truly tectonic change, is that it produces like serious thinking. I've met more people in the last 2 years who I'm really impressed by.
To many of these guests, Carlson put the same three questions, which I call the three Tucker questions. Question number one, why did extreme progressive liberals suddenly try to drag the country into so many divisive woke policies from 2020 and beyond? Question number two was, how should we react to all of these? And question number three, how will these end for the country? This video covers question number one. I think all of the answers are interesting and worth listening to as a compilation, but I don't think any of the guests nailed it. So stay tuned to the end of the video and I want to give you my answer.
You know, I think it was Matt Taibbi who said it, that once Trump won, people's brains got broken. You know, they so couldn't wrap their heads around it.
So what I think ends up happening in 2016 is there's this massive backlash on behalf of the Democrats, certain elements of the intelligence communities, that the American people had the temerity to elect Donald Trump.
It's all about fighting Trump. And so they do that for 4 years. And they mostly do that through this unbelievably ridiculous conspiracy theory. They say, no, it wasn't us, it was the Russians who controlled the outcome. So they lean into this conspiracy theory that Donald Trump was a secret agent of Russia, that they colluded to steal the election, and they just are off to the races with fake news.
You know, like, what is that?
You know, I do think it comes back to the media. I think the media has worked so hard to convince a certain group of people that they are bad and convince a certain other group of people that they are good, that they've created this sort of morality play, this sort of...
It comes down to that the Blues want to rule and more that the Reds want to not be ruled. And that passion for ruling explains a lot of the real serious acrimony.
So what do you think this is really about?
Oh.
It's okay, you're in a safe space.
Look, I think it's about control, obviously.
Yeah.
Obviously, motive is ultimately unknowable, unless you're God. But what's your guess as to the motive here?
My guess, Tucker, is that it's about control, which I'd actually argue it was always about control. And it's about unit discipline. It's, I'm your boss, and I told you.
Unit discipline.
And to the extent there's turmoil, to the extent there is conflict, that is a great fundraising opportunity.
That many have bought into, that this is about culture wars, or it's about vaccines. No, it's not. It's about power and money.
So I think the ideology is definitely about power. I don't think most of its adherents think that way. They honestly believe that all white people are racist because of things that happened in the past.
The answer is that there's a feature of what we call game theory. So there's very little to gain in standing up against such a mob, because the mob does have tremendous power to ruin your livelihood, to damage your reputation. I think that's a big part of the explanation of why this movement is so powerful, is that people are just afraid to say what's true.
Yeah, like, what are the shackles you're talking about? It's self-imposed, you know, but it's also cultural. People don't want to be looked at in a negative way. People don't want to be brave. People don't want to go there. I mean, there's something deeply embedded in, I think, human psychology, right? This desire to fit in. Maybe it's evolutionary, right? If you were in the tribe and you were, you know, just contrarian, maybe they would just banish you or something.
I always want to know the answer to this question. I'm not smart enough to provide it, but maybe you are. What's the motive? Everything you said is clearly true. The people running the country don't like the country. They want to destroy the country, and they are. But why?
I think there's something that feels good about embracing social justice. It's kind of a cheap way to get a rush of, I'm a moral, righteous person.
Yes.
I do the right thing. And it's rather not costly.
The CEOs today, they want to be heralded and championed as do-gooders. It's not enough to be really rich. They want to be heroes, too.
Why?
Who doesn't want it? The same reason people want to be heroes for staying home and doing nothing. It feels good.
But you're running a blue jean company. What if we imported millions of poor people with low educational standards at that exact moment? Would that help or hurt?
I don't think that would probably help very much.
You don't think it would help?
No.
Why are they doing it?
Again, that's an excellent question. I think it's to soothe their consciences, to tell themselves that they're good people despite everything else that they do.
I don't understand. I don't understand. Why has it been allowed to be like this? And I just happened to be walking in this store and I saw this book, and the title was something along the lines of, "Your understanding doesn't matter. God's will surpasses all understanding."
Why the hostility to Christianity, do you think?
Well, the Bible has predicted this. This is the final battle of good versus evil. We are here. We are here right now. This is it. This is it.
That all these things that are happening now, how did they happen? They've happened because man has forgotten God.
But there's also a fairly large group of activists who, and I hate to say this, but a lot of them are kind of like middle-aged white ladies who listen to NPR. They're very emotional about this stuff. Yeah. What's their motive?
Well, who knows what their motive is? I mean,
do you know the group I'm talking about?
I know precisely what you're
what
talking
is that?
Because they populate the witness panels.
Yeah. I mean, I just sort of wonder, like, what?
Yeah, well, a lot of them they view themselves as good people.
Oh, for sure. They definitely do that.
And I don't want to dismiss them or anything of that nature. They don't, I think to a large extent, they may not appreciate the harms that they're visiting upon.
Yes, I agree with that.
Communities like mine.
Yes, exactly.
But we see these folks at the Civil Rights Commission on a very regular basis. And they sometimes are, no disrespect and not identifying any given witness, but they're almost hysterical.
Totally.
And they've adopted what I call the false narrative of race in America.
Why would they support the destruction of the society that made their businesses possible?
I have two answers. One, wives. Number two, college graduates.
Oh, come on.
Women are the most uneducated and left-wing, praise to left-wing ideology, and they're pushing their husbands left. He said females rank higher on neuroticism. That started everybody off, but he was right. Neuroticism means you're risk averse, you're easily frightened, you're not competitive, you're not aggressive. Females way dominate on the neuroticism axis of the big five personality traits.
Why would anyone push that on a population?
There's a general love of fanaticism that a certain kind of person has. Just having a doctrine that gives them all the answers, that allows them to condemn other people and feel superior themselves. We can see this all throughout human history.
So a lot of very smart, very sophisticated people are spending a lot of time and a ton of money on a propaganda campaign designed to convince the population of something that's obviously not true and that is bad for them and their kids. Why are they doing that?
I think it all comes to power. It's all about power. If I have the power over you to make you not say words that I don't want to hear, then that's a powerful position.
Yes.
I also wonder if we've got to the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and then it inverts and it just tends to narcissism.
Can you explain? That is deep. Can you just unpack that a little bit for people who aren't familiar with what you're talking about?
So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is all about what a human needs to thrive. So it might start with shelter, food, love, etc. And then you get to the top. And we're fulfilled human beings. And I believe that fundamentally you need a purpose. I then think you get to this sort of luxury stage of life where there's no fight, there's no purpose. And then what have you got? You've just got yourself.
The reason why people buy into the narrative that leads to mass formation is not because they think that the narrative is correct. Not at all. The reason why they buy into the narrative is because it leads to this new social bond, because it makes them feel connected again.
Then both these things happen and nobody pauses for even a moment to try to understand why they happened.
But when you have a set of people who believe they are morally superior to the other side of the argument because they're better people, and this is what the modern liberal left genuinely believe. They actually believe that they are better people.
what has replaced the old left is really a moral vision, a social engineering project, and you see it in every institution.
Why is none of this aimed at China or India or Africa or why is it all aimed here?
I think that we are really living in the only surviving utopian regime.
Calling yourself pro-life, why is it so important that they had to destroy you?
For those on the other side of the spectrum, I believe they view people that are pro-life as evil and vile and something that should be destroyed.
I don't really see what the heaven looks like in the progressive
because
religion.
it's vengeance driven. They don't even know what it looks like. The rank and file leftist, angry activist, they don't know what they want, and except blood.
I think that's right. Why would people who run cities encourage their destruction?
Because they're driven by a fantasy of a world where there's social justice, which is kind of a perfect world. If you believe that you can redeem the world, that you can make the world such a better place, that there's no racism, sexism, war, poverty, what lie would you not tell? What crime would you not commit or support to achieve that? The difference now in the left is so ignorant because of the destruction of our schools. I wrote 5 books about the Marxist takeover of the universities and the purge of conservative faculty.
Where do they want this to go?
Well, I think that there's no particular plan in where the project of the left boils down to 2 things, and neither of them is really related to money. One I've already mentioned, which is the emancipation of everybody from unchosen bonds, atomization, as you say, fundamentally. And the other is forced egalitarianism, that is a kind of leveling of people, that everybody has to be equal in all ways. The reason that they believe this is because it gives meaning to your life to believe this. That is, if you're a somewhat atomized person already, you've already emancipated yourself from unchosen bonds, you're kind of adrift. You're not married, you don't have any other close bonds, you have a chosen family, which means a family that's no family at all. You're looking for meaning in your life. And this has always been the disadvantage of the right relative to the left. That is, the left gets meaning from politics, whereas people on the right get meaning from normal life, on average.
So what happens in a world where a lot of people don't have these profound family ties anymore? I think one thing that happens is that they frantically try to recreate the situation of the family. And this, I think, is what identity politics boils down to. It is a frantic search for a collective identity that will surround you, that will give you your place in the world, that will answer that fundamental question, who am I? People are now trying to find the answer to that question in politics because they are not finding it at home.
There's also a way, he also talks about how in order to feel powerful, you manipulate your emotions first and then you manipulate other people's emotions. So first I make myself afraid of climate change and then I go try to make everybody else afraid and I gain some power over you with fear.
I do notice that when I hear academics speak, it's very noticeable. A lot of them seem really angry.
Yeah.
Now, these are people with guaranteed lifetime income. What are they so mad? I don't spend any time with these people, so that's a sincere question. What are they so mad about?
Maybe there is some subconscious or maybe conscious acknowledgement of maybe they took a wrong turn. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When you're in the midst of it, it's almost the weirder somebody is, the more they're like, the more eccentric they are. They're like, that guy's obviously a super genius. Like, look how bizarre he is, right? Like, and you're like, yeah, no, like, oh wow,
holy shit, I want some of that.
Yeah, he's in absolute anguish. Don't you want to be like that? Yeah.
it does seem like professional academics are some of the most miserable people in all of the world.
Yeah.
Was that, well, you know them. Was that your experience?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, and I think I don't know what the explanation is. I mean, I think.
Did you ever meet anybody on like a Friday night who said, I can't wait for the weekend, I'm going to sleep with my wife, play with my kids, and go trout fishing, and I'm so psyched?
There's a few academics that are balanced like that, but they're rare. They're rare.
Now just think about like the impulse. If you're walking down the street, walking your dog, and you don't have a mask on, and someone's on the other side of the street with a mask, and they will storm over to you and yell at you for not having a mask on. I'm just thinking to myself, if you're worried about them not, then wouldn't you want to just stay away from them and mind your own business? But the impulse is, you need to be obeying, you need to be doing
So in cases like that, and I think that's a real example, what are the chances that the person who storms across the street to scream at you about a mask hates his father?
Like you said, I'm not a shrink, but I think that...
Oh, but go ahead and play one just for a second.
The guests produced basically two categories of answers. One category was non-personal forces, i.e. power, money, and control of who will do the governing. The other category was personal motivations, i.e. morality, meaning in life, in pursuit of happiness. My opinion is that, yes, we are dealing with a group of mostly liberal individuals who are miserable, adrift in the world, and spewing hatred at the rest of us, which has impacts on power and control. But even the guests who touched on this with relatively deep psychological explanations did not explain why are they like that. Why are some people like that and not others? Why exactly are these activists unhappy, miserable, angry, and trying to shame the rest of us to adopt their views? The answer, I believe, is that they have skewed moral foundations. To explain this, I find the moral foundations theory of Hayton Joseph useful. This theory explains that morality is not a single unitary thing. Morality consists of probably 6 different foundations, just like personality consists of different characteristics. The Care Harm Foundation motivates individuals to help others, particularly disadvantaged groups. Fairness Cheating Foundation is focused on justice. Loyalty Betrayal Foundation cares about family, nation, and patriotism. Authority Subversion Foundation values tradition and dislikes rebellion. Purity Degradation Foundation is focused on sanctity of the body. Liberty Oppression Foundation reacts sharply against those who attempt to dominate others. Conservatives tend to show strong interest in all 6 foundations, and therefore they have to balance how much they invest in one foundation so as not to harm the other foundations. Liberals tend to show interest primarily in only the first 2, care, harm, and fairness cheating. They will invest efforts more on those forums even if that undermines the other foundations. The difference is more than a theory and is backed up by some research. For example, this is a figure from a study by Graham, Haight, and Nosek. The left side, highlighted in blue, shows that self-identified extreme liberals value the Harm and Fairness Foundation more than the other 3 foundations when they make moral decisions. The right side, highlighted in red, shows that self-identified extreme conservatives value all foundations more or less equally. That's what I mean by saying liberals have skewed morals. So at the start of each day, victimhood is nearly all they have to care about and fight for. And I think Charles Haywood, Heather McDonald, and Kelly J. Keene got closest to this notion. When this skewness leads to people to not being married, not having children, and not being invested in a larger group purpose, this describes the miserable individuals that many of Carlson's guests mentioned. The other key thing to know is that people are born to be this way. The skewness is in their genetics. Most of them could not change if they wanted to. There is no way to alter their beliefs with reason. The reason this is important to understand is that we've always had these people in the population. I don't think there's anything fundamentally new about them as humans. So an additional explanation is needed about why they were not so influential in the past and how they became so influential in 2020 and beyond. I think the answer is that the country changed, not the people, in the sense that we no longer have everyone with a shared national purpose. I agree with Christopher Buskirk that the sense of a shared national purpose may have been lost in America in the 20th century. After America ran out of frontier land to conquer, a collective sense of inevitable progress for building the American project was no more.
I actually think the big American project from 1607, Jamestown, until maybe 1945, maybe before that even, maybe you could make the argument that it was until like 1916, it was conquering the frontier. And these other elements that we talk about a lot, like the political elements, the ideological elements, there's a way in which those were means and not ends. And the end was, let's build something really big and really new and really worth having. Once we ran out of frontier, something really changed about the country. It was like in the American cultural DNA to want to conquer frontier, to want to build things. And so then we undertook the project we set about like 100 years ago, which is let's just try and remake the whole world.
Let's just fix the world.
Let's just fix the world.
Woodrow Wilson destroyed the country and didn't help Europe much either.
Yeah, I mean, 1917, World War I, we're going to war to protect democracy, and we've, basically been at war ever since.
Right.
This change in our nation created the conditions for the inherently unhappy people to be more willing to express their unhappiness and direct their anger inwards at the nation. If you can't focus your self-worth on building, you can focus it on deconstructing. Combine that with the introduction of the internet and social media, where a single person can reach more people in a day than a king in the 17th century ever could, and you have the recipe for skewed morals to be amplified.
I then think you get to this sort of luxury stage of life where there's no fight, there's no purpose, and then what have you got? You've just got yourself. And we're in moderately godless countries with less organized religion, and I just think that that's where it goes. If you have no collective purpose and heading towards the same thing, then if you look to yourself, that is where a swift road to hell is. And yes. I think that's where we are. They did an experiment
I would just pause and say that's just a wonderful description and true. You wind up with yourself alone, drowning in Lake Me, and that is the road to misery.
I think so.